Those who have weird neighbors. What does your neighbor do that is weird or creepy? Not my neighbor but a friend's. Lady used to put her car in neutral and push it down the driveway because she said it saved her $ on gas. Same lady would also get on her hands and knees and trim her yard with scissors after the lawn care company was done. Oh, I just remembered. I also have a neighbor that collects part cruisers. He's got at least 6 of them and washes them all the time. Seems like a weird car to collect. They aren't vintage or anything. I've caught my neighbor probably like 5 to 6 times just staring at me through the window with complete focus. My neighbors have a tent in their backyard. The tent is listed on Airbnb. My wife and I live in a large apartment complex in Chicago. I'm not sure which apartment this guy actually lives in, but I always see him zooming out of the courtyard. We call him Future Man. Future Man does not speak or walk or try to fit into society in any way. He is easily 6'7" and weighs at least 275 pounds. He wears sunglasses at night and I've never seen him actually walk. He rides everywhere on one of those 2-wheeled hoverboard thingies, and at night straps rope lights to his torso that flash incredibly bright red and green light. Sometimes he also has a little Bluetooth speaker clipped to his backpack that blasts some pretty solid 80s/90s hip hop. He does not slow down. He drives it mostly on the road and does not observe such things as stop signs or stoplights. We have lived in this apartment complex for 5 years and just 2 weeks ago he acknowledged me for the first time. He simply gave me a head nod and put his hand into a fist, as if to say you're okay with me. He said nothing in actuality, but I'm still beaming from the experience. He's my favorite neighbor, but he is weird. My neighbor sets off huge fireworks in the street throughout the year and just shoves the remains/trash down the sewer. Take that, Pennywise. We are pretty sure that the lady who lives across from us is a high-end prostitute. We're in a good neighborhood, but she has a wide variety of older men visit her at all hours of day. She's the only person on the block who doesn't come to our block parties or socialize, but once she asked my neighbor to mow her lawn and, upon completion, decided not to pay him because the work wasn't of a good enough quality. It was actually decent, and he was 12 years old, for heaven's sake. We now refer to her as that lady and everybody knows who we are talking about. My next door neighbors keep using our stuff. They've been caught with their hose attached to our water, taking our outdoor chairs, etc. They also have no problem honking their car horn repeatedly at any time of day or night when someone isn't getting out of the house fast enough. There's a senile old lady in the apartment behind me. Every time I take my dogs out, she gives me dirty looks. When she sees my girlfriend she smiles and talks to her, introduces herself every time, as if they've never met. Then I walk outside and she scowls. This morning I took my dogs out. Her blinds were open and she was looking out the window. I saw her and smiled. She shut the blinds, never smiling. I've given up on saying good morning, smiling, etc. At my parents' house throwing up, he was a horrific gossip and would literally run outside when he saw you to talk about so and so. Anyways, one time I fucked up and needed some plan B. I go to the store and he's there. I notice him following me aisle to aisle, so I double back him, grab the birth control, and split for the checkout. I was in the clear until the dumbass cashier couldn't open the box and yells to her boss, I need help opening this plan B. Of course he fucking showed up. So the next day I have a pit in my stomach because I knew he was going to tell the neighborhood. I pass these 2 old ladies who mention the plan B I took once they assumed I was out of earshot. One said not to tell my mom. It was my business and she understood how rough that must have been. The other commented the neighbor had no business sticking his nose in a teenager's life and she was going to talk to him. My mom never found out. I had a neighbor, alcoholic/druggie, who thought there were 2 women living in my house. I had dyed my hair blonde from brunette. He continually asked where the brunette was and how she was doing. I finally just said she was fine. We had some that pretended to be upstanding religious people. Well, son was a big time drug dealer. Dad lost his security clearance because of it, and the mother was a raging bitch. We'd hear her screaming in the front yard on Sunday mornings, get your fucking Bibles and get in the fucking car. We are going to be late. I'm not sitting in the back of the goddamn church. On and on. They also let their dogs shit in the front yard instead of the backyard like normal people. The mother came to our door once and screamed at my mother about my sister being a slut and coming in all hours of the night. Well, she worked in a bar and she had the drug dealing son. She kept trying to push the door open, so my sister called the cops. That was the start to the dad losing his security clearance. He should have divorced her because he wasn't a terrible guy. Do housemates count? If so, *DRINKS a 2-liter bottle of cola every fucking day, buys it from the corner shop, so it costs double as well. Stole female housemates' leather trousers and wanked all over them. *PRETENDED to fall outside an Albanian car wash garage in order to get compensation from them. Is now in great fear of Albanians. *HAD another guy stay for about a month. Heard him say about 3 words whilst there. Like you say hi, and he just walks past. Quite antisocial in that regard. Although he never caused a problem, it was just odd. Apartment living is amazing. I hear my neighbor throw up / dry heave every morning. A friend of mine has a neighbor who sometimes walks around in a gas mask. No one can confirm who he is. We got a new guy who can't contain his belongings to his own space. Each condo in the building comes with 2 tandem parking spaces. He owns 5 motorcycles and 3 cars, so that's not enough. They give him another set of tandem spaces, and here's the only reason anyone gives a shit. Part of the fire lane in the garage. You saw that. The hoe for the building decided money was more important than safety. So he's got 3 motorcycles in an area actively obstructing the fire lane, which is also against their own stupid HOA rules, not to mention fire codes. But he's not done. You can tell which apartment this guy's in, because he's the only one with a huge planter next to his door. In the damn fire lane. The planter has grown. It's now got 2 plastic flamingos, a wagon, and a stroller, all in an active fire safety footpath. Why do I care about fires? We're in California. So he has a truck and a car, both kind of old and beat up. Every day he switches their parking places, and every day he leaves the car running, opens the hood and just stares at the engine for about an hour. He'll step back for a smoke break, eyes still hard on the running engine from afar. Sometimes he'll sit in the driver's seat and listen to the one tape he has left apparently, and it's Sheryl Crow. Every single day. My neighbor's kid stands on our shared fence and chews it. At my old house, we had a neighbor who was fucking batshit. His name was Ed, and he lived on a hill right above from us. He would always invite me over when I was a little kid to play with his chickens and rabbits, but my grandmother always said no. I never understood why. Ed built a shed with 1 window only, facing our house. This is weird, because there's no view on the side my house is on. The view would have been to the left. There was no logical reason for him to face the only window towards our house. Ed also didn't work with tools, so we could never pinpoint what the shed was for, as they had a basement in their house where they stored stuff. My grandpa built a literal 20-foot fence on the side of our house that faced his house. I didn't know why it was so tall, and it was a common joke among my friends when we were younger. One day, me and my grandmother were in the pool, and my grandpa caught Ed peeping through a hole in the fence. He would also walk by the yard when my grandma was mowing and tell her he enjoyed watching her mow in her shorts. When I got to high school, he would stand at the top of our yard, wait for me to come home when no one else was there, and come on the porch when I was trying to unlock the door, making random ass conversation, and always asking me if he could come in. When I was a freshman in college, my grandpa found a stepping stool underneath my closet window, like someone had been trying to be peeping. Ed was a dumbass. His initials were painted on the underneath. Ed and his wife has a daughter who was pregnant with twins. Unfortunately, she ended up miscarrying them both later in the pregnancy. They had a funeral for them, and my grandmother was asked by Ed's wife, would like to hear that Ed's wife was a very kind woman, worked with my grandma, but had no idea how creepy her husband was. If while they were at the funeral, my granny could take their dog out, she accepted. Ed's wife was supposed to bring the keys, but Ed showed up instead. My grandma was alone. Ed apparently told my grandma how he'd love to get her naked and tried to kiss her. My grandma slammed the door in his face, locked it, and called my grandpa. Ed stood and paced around our porch for 15 minutes before he finally left. Remember, he did this 30 minutes before his grandbaby's funeral. My grandpa showed up, went on his property, and told him if he ever saw him come close to me or my grandmother ever again he would end his life. I've since moved out, but my grandparents say they don't get much trouble from addition. He has a in-home nurse now due to Parkinson's, and 3 a fit when he found out he had a male nurse because he wanted a female nurse instead. Ed's known in my old neighborhood for creeping on women. Luckily all our neighbors knew how weird he was and were always on the lookout. Moral of the story, make sure you don't have an Ed next door. Not so much creepy, just weird. I've lived in my current place for a few years now. My upstairs neighbors moved in about 2 years ago and they're interesting people. When they first moved in, they would have really loud sex. Their bedroom is right above mine. I wasn't bothered by this because it's an apartment. You get used to that shit, and B, they did it in the evening, so it wasn't like they were waking anyone up. I always left it alone. One night a few months into their first year, I was trolling around on the top floor outside because the gutter was clogged and the apartment maintenance team is slow as shit, so I was unclogging it myself with a yardstick. My upstairs neighbor came out onto the deck and I nearly scared the shit out of him, but I told him I was just the downstairs neighbor and he relaxed. We got to talking, and then he suddenly got nervous and said, "Hey, me and my girl, we aren't disturbing you, are we?" I laughed and said, "No, I get it. I have a boyfriend too." He said okay, but we'll still try to keep it down. And he went back inside. Ever since then, they've played loud music every time they have sex to try and cover it up. It's kind of adorable. They had music playing for 6 hours over the weekend one day and I gave my neighbor a grin and a thumbs up the next day when I ran into him.